The massive space station called Zenith Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most cities on Earth, with towers that reached up like silver fingers and rings that spun slowly to create gravity. Inside its largest chamber, beings from 12 different worlds sat around a circular table that glowed with soft blue light. Ambassador Velthor stood at his place, his 6 arms folded across his chest. His people, the Sevarians, were tall and thin with gray skin that seemed to shimmer under the lights. He looked nervous, which was unusual for someone who had been a diplomat for 40 years. "Honored members of the council," Velthor said, his voice translator making his words sound smooth and clear. "We face a crisis. The Krell Empire has broken the treaty. They have taken 3 colony worlds in the Outer Rim. Thousands are dead. Millions more are now slaves." Around the table, the other ambassadors shifted in their seats. Some made sounds of concern. Others simply stared ahead with eyes that looked nothing like human eyes. General Thexelon, the military coordinator, was a massive creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a lizard. His scales were dark green and his voice rumbled like thunder. "We know this, Velthor. The question is what we do about it. Our forces are spread thin. The Krell have been building their fleet for years while we enjoyed peace. That is why I propose we accept Earth's offer," Velthor said quickly. The chamber erupted in noise. Several ambassadors spoke at once, their translators creating a confusing jumble of words. One small creature with 4 eyes actually laughed, a high-pitched sound that hurt to hear. "The humans?" General Thexelon growled. "The Deathworlders? You want us to let them into our military network?" "I know what you all think," Velthor continued, raising his voice. "But we need help. The humans have offered their fleet. They want to join the council and help maintain peace." "They are primitives," another ambassador said. This one was covered in something that looked like blue feathers. "They still use chemical explosives. Kinetic weapons. They have barely left their own star system. Their planet is a Class 12 death world," someone else added. "That means it is one of the most dangerous planets ever discovered. Nothing that evolves there can be trusted. They are probably violent and unpredictable." General Thexelon stood up, his full height making him tower over everyone else. "I have read the reports on Earth. Extreme gravity, poisonous atmosphere for most species, weather that can kill in minutes, predators everywhere, diseases that evolve faster than medicine can keep up. The oceans are filled with monsters. Even the plants are dangerous." He shook his massive head. "Whatever evolved there would have to be incredibly aggressive just to survive childhood." "That is exactly why we should consider them," Velthor argued. "We need that aggression now. We need warriors, not just soldiers." The debate went on for another hour. Finally, a vote was called. The decision was made. 2 human representatives would be allowed to address the council. If they impressed the members, humanity would be given a chance to prove themselves in combat. Just one chance. 2 days later, Commander Jake Murphy and Captain Lisa Hayes walked through the corridors of Zenith Prime. Jake was a solid man in his 40s with short brown hair going gray at the temples. He wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's Space Force with rows of medals on his chest. Lisa was younger, maybe 35, with sharp green eyes and blonde hair tied back in a tight bun. She also wore the uniform and she carried herself like someone who had seen real combat. "They are staring at us," Lisa said quietly as they passed a group of aliens. The creatures looked like tall insects with crystal skin. They stopped their conversation to watch the humans walk by. "Let them stare," Jake replied. "We are probably the first humans they have ever seen in person. Do you think we have a chance?" Lisa asked. "I mean, really? They think we are savages." Jake smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We are savages, Lisa, that is the point. These people have been playing nice for so long they have forgotten how to fight a real war. The Krell are about to teach them a hard lesson. We are just offering to teach it first." They reached the council chamber and waited while the massive doors slid open. Inside, all the ambassadors were already seated. Jake and Lisa walked to the center of the room and suddenly they were standing in a circle of light, while the ambassadors sat in shadow around them. Commander Murphy, Captain Hayes. General Thexelon's voice came from the darkness. "Welcome to Zenith Prime. We have reviewed your credentials. Impressive combat records, both of you. Multiple tours and various conflicts on your world." "Thank you, General," Jake said. "But Earth conflicts are not the same as modern warfare," the general continued. "You fight with bullets and bombs. We fight with energy shields, plasma weapons, and faster-than-light tactical systems. Your vessels are slow. Your weapons are primitive. What makes you think you can help us against the Krell? Lisa spoke up before Jake could answer. General, if I may. Yes, our technology is behind yours. We know that. But we have something you do not have anymore. And what is that? The blue-feathered ambassador asked. Experience with real war, Lisa said. Not border skirmishes. Not police actions. Real war, where everything is on the line. Where you use every advantage you can find, no matter how small. Where you adapt or you die. Bold words, Velthor said from his seat. But can you back them up? Jake stepped forward. Give us a target. Any target. Let us show you what humans can do. If we fail, we will withdraw our application and leave you in peace. But if we succeed, you give us a full seat on this council. There was silence for a long moment. Then General Thexelon laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. Very well, Deathworlders. We will give you your chance. The Krell have a staging ground in the Corvin system. It is defended by a full battle group. We were planning an assault with 3 of our fleets. Instead, we will send your 3rd fleet, alone. If you can take that moon and hold it, we will consider your application seriously. And if we cannot, Jake asked. Then you go home and never return, the general said. Do we have an agreement? Jake looked at Lisa. She nodded once. Jake turned back to the darkness. We have an agreement. Excellent, General Thexelon said. We will send a Severian observer ship to monitor your performance. They will report back to us on your tactics and effectiveness. You have 1 week to prepare. Dismissed. Jake and Lisa walked out of the chamber. Once the doors closed behind them, Lisa let out a long breath. They set us up. That is a suicide mission. Probably, Jake agreed. But it is the only shot we have got. Come on. We need to contact Admiral Cole and brief him on the situation. 3 days later, the EFS Valiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Corvin system. Admiral Marcus Cole stood on the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back as he studied the holographic display in front of him. He was an older man, maybe 60, with deep lines in his dark face and gray hair cut military short. Status report, Cole said. A young officer at a console spoke up. We are reading multiple Krell signatures near Corvin 4. Looks like the intelligence was correct. They have a base on the moon. Detecting at least 15 capital ships and maybe 50 smaller vessels. And us? Cole asked. 3rd Fleet is at full strength, sir. 20 capital ships, 80 destroyers and frigates, and about 200 fighters. We are outnumbered, but not by much. Cole nodded. And the Severian observer? They are holding position about 1 million kilometers away, sir. Far enough to be safe, but close enough to watch. Good. Cole turned to his communications officer. Send a message to all ships. Battle Plan Delta 7. We go in hard and fast. No holding back. The galaxy is watching, people. Let us give them a show. On the bridge of the EFS Tempest, Captain Lisa Hayes received the orders and smiled. Battle Plan Delta 7 was nicknamed Protocol Savage by the crews who trained with it. It threw out every rule of modern space combat and went back to basics. Hit hard, move fast, and never fight fair. All hands, battle stations, Lisa announced over the ship-wide comm. This is not a drill. Enemy contact in 30 minutes. Arm all weapons. Charge the railguns. Prep the kinetic missiles. And remember what we trained for. These Krell think they are superior because they have fancy shields and energy weapons. We are going to teach them why humans do not need fancy toys to win a fight. Down in the fighter bay, Lieutenant Kevin Barnes climbed into his cockpit. His fighter was small and fast, built for speed and agility rather than heavy armor. It carried missiles and a rotary cannon that fired solid slugs at incredible speed. Old technology by galactic standards, but it had one advantage. It was simple and it worked. You ready for this? His wingman, Lieutenant Amy Chen, asked over the radio. Born ready, Kevin replied. Let us go show these aliens what a Deathworlder can do. In another part of the fleet, Staff Sergeant Nicole Wright was briefing her Marine squad. They were preparing for possible boarding actions, wearing armor that looked bulky and primitive compared to the sleek suits that other species used. But human armor was designed for one thing, keeping a soldier alive in the worst conditions imaginable. Listen up, Nicole said to her squad. The Krell are tough. They are strong and they have good weapons, but they evolved on a low-gravity world with a thin atmosphere. That means they are slow and they get tired fast. War Chief Drakmore watched his display screen with growing amusement as the human ships approached. He was a large Krell, even by his species standards, with dark red scales and 4 powerful arms. His ship, the Bloodfang, was a heavy cruiser equipped with the latest plasma cannons and energy shields. "How many ships do the humans have?" he asked his second-in-command. 20 large vessels, perhaps 100 smaller ones, and many tiny fighters, the officer replied. "They are moving in a simple formation. No advanced tactics visible." Drakmor laughed, a sound like metal scraping on metal. "The Council sends children to fight us. Very well. Activate shields and prepare the main batteries. We will give these primitives a demonstration of true military power, then send them running back to their little world." He opened a channel to the rest of his battle group. "All ship in standard intimidation formation. Show them our strength. They will flee, and we will not waste ammunition chasing them." The Krell ships moved into position, their energy shields glowing with a purple light. They formed a wall in space, impressive and terrifying. It was a formation designed to make weaker enemies surrender without firing a shot. It had worked a dozen times before. On the Severian observer ship, Ambassador Velthor watched through the viewing screen. Next to him stood a younger Severian officer who served as military analyst. "The Krell are using Formation Delta," the officer said. "Standard intimidation pattern. The humans should recognize they are outmatched and withdraw to regroup." "Should?" Velthor asked. "That is what any rational commander would do," the officer replied. "Fighting from this position would be suicide." Velthor said nothing. He had read the reports on human military history. The word rational did not appear very often in those reports. On the bridge of the Valiant, Admiral Cole studied the Krell formation. "They are trying to scare us," he said. "Good shields, strong weapons, impressive display. What do you think, Captain Hayes?" Lisa's face appeared on his communication screen from the Tempest. "I think they fight like people who have not faced a real enemy in a long time, sir. That formation looks nice, but it has gaps. They are relying on their shields too much." "My thoughts exactly," Cole said. "All ships execute Protocol Savage. Railguns first, then missiles. Fighters, you are clear to engage." "Understood, sir," Lisa said with a fierce smile. "Tempest is weapons hot and ready." The human fleet suddenly changed. Instead of slowing down or retreating, they accelerated directly toward the Krell formation. At the same time, every ship opened fire with their railguns. A railgun works on a simple principle. It uses magnetic fields to launch a solid projectile at incredible speed. The human railguns fired slugs of dense metal, each one weighing several tons at speeds close to the speed of light. They were old technology, simple and brutal, but they had one massive advantage. The Krell energy shields were designed to deflect energy weapons like plasma bolts and laser beams. They worked by creating a field that absorbed or redirected energy, but they were never designed to stop solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. The shields simply did not register the slugs as threats until they had already passed through. The first salvo hit 3 Krell cruisers at once. The metal slugs punched through the shields like they were not even there, tore through the hull armor and kept going. One cruiser exploded immediately. The other 2 spun out of control, venting atmosphere and debris. "Impossible!" Drakmor roared. "How did they penetrate our shields?" "Unknown, War Chief," his officer shouted back. The projectiles moved too fast for the shields to compensate. "Return fire! All batteries!" The Krell ships opened up with their plasma cannons. Bright green bolts of superheated matter shot across space toward the human fleet. Many hit their targets. The human shields, weaker than the Krell's, flickered and overloaded. 2 human destroyers took direct hits and went dark, but the human ships kept coming. And now they launched their missiles. These were not energy weapons or guided plasma. They were kinetic kill vehicles, smart missiles carrying solid warheads and their own thrusters. Hundreds of them streaked toward the Krell formation. Some were shot down by point defense systems, but many got through. They slammed into Krell ships with the force of small meteors, each impact causing massive damage. "They are fighting like savages," the Krell officer shouted. "They have no discipline." But Drakmor was starting to understand. The humans were not fighting without discipline. They were fighting with a completely different kind of discipline, one he had never seen before. They accepted losses that would make any Council species retreat. They used weapons that any modern military would consider obsolete. And they were winning. "Call for reinforcements," Drakmor ordered. "Now." Lieutenant Kevin Barnes dove his fighter through a cloud of debris, his eyes locked on a Krell fighter ahead of him. The enemy craft was bigger than his, with better shields and energy weapons. On paper, it should win any dogfight easily, but Kevin had an advantage. He had trained his whole life in Earth's gravity, which was twice as strong as what most species considered normal. His bones were denser, his muscles stronger, his reaction time honed by years of competing against other humans. When he pulled his fighter into a turn that generated 12 Gs of force, his vision grayed at the edges, but he stayed conscious. The Krell pilot, experiencing that same force, blacked out immediately. Kevin's rotary cannon fired, sending a stream of solid slugs into the enemy fighter. The Krell's shields held for a moment, then failed. The fighter came apart in a ball of fire. "Splash one!" Kevin called over the radio. "Amy, how are you doing?" "I have got 3 on my tail," Amy Chen replied. Her fighter weaved through space, dodging plasma bolts. "Could use some help here." "On my way." Kevin flipped his fighter end over end in a maneuver that would have killed most pilots from the G-forces alone. He came up behind the 3 Krell fighters chasing Amy and opened fire. 2 went down immediately. The 3rd tried to turn, but Amy had already come around. They caught it in a crossfire. "Thanks, Kev," Amy said. "These guys are tough, but they fly like they are in a parade. No improvisation." "That is because they have never had to improvise," Kevin replied. "Let us keep showing them how it is done." On the surface of Corvin 4's moon, a Krell garrison watched the battle in orbit with growing concern. The base commander, a veteran named Krell, received an urgent message from War Chief Drakmor. "The humans are more dangerous than expected." Drakmor's voice crackled over the communication system. "Prepare the base for possible assault. Reinforcements are on the way." Krell looked at his defenses. He had 2,000 soldiers, anti-ship batteries, and hardened bunkers. The base was built into the moon's rocky surface, making it difficult to attack from orbit. He felt confident. Then he saw the first wave of human landing craft descending through the thin atmosphere. They were not sleek dropships like the Council used. They were armored boxes with rockets attached, designed to take damage and keep flying. Some were hit by anti-aircraft fire and exploded, but most made it through. Commander Jake Murphy was in the lead craft, standing with his Marine unit as the ship shook from impacts. He gripped a handle on the ceiling and spoke into his helmet radio. "Listen up, Marines. This is what we have trained for. The Krell are strong and they are tough, but they are not used to close-quarters combat. We go in fast, we hit them hard, and we do not stop moving. Remember, they evolved in low gravity. They are going to be slow." "Ura!" the Marines shouted back. The landing craft slammed into the ground hard enough to crack the moon's surface. The ramp dropped and Jake led his unit out into hell. Plasma bolts flew overhead. Explosions sent rocks flying. The Krell were ready for them, but Jake's Marines were ready too. They moved in small units, using the rocky terrain for cover. They advanced in short bursts, covering each other, using tactics that had been developed in 100 wars on Earth. The Krell fired from fortified positions, but the humans did not try to assault those positions directly. Instead, Staff Sergeant Nicole Wright led her squad around the flank, using a ravine that the Krell had not bothered to guard. She planted explosive charges on what looked like a ventilation shaft. "Fire in the hole," she called. The explosives blew, and suddenly the Krell position was filled with smoke. The garrison's air filtration system had been damaged. For the Krell, who needed precise mixtures of gases to breathe efficiently, it was a disaster. Soldiers began coughing and stumbling. Jake's unit hit them from the front while they were distracted. The Krell were physically powerful, each one capable of ripping apart a human in single combat. But combat was not single fights. It was chaos, confusion, and quick thinking. The humans excelled at all 3. One Krell warrior charged at Jake, roaring a challenge. Jake did not try to match the alien's strength. Instead, he dodged to the side and shot the Krell in the knee. The alien fell, and 2 of Jake's Marines finished it with precise shots. "Keep moving," Jake shouted. "Do not let them reorganize." On the Bloodfang, Drakmor watched as his forces on the moon began to fall back. His fleet in orbit was down to half strength. The humans had lost ships too, but they did not seem to care. They just kept attacking with brutal efficiency. "War Chief, the reinforcements have arrived," his officer announced. Warlord Krexenel stood in the command center of his flagship, the Destroyer of Hope. He was older than Drakmor, his scales showing scars from a dozen campaigns. He had conquered 4 star systems for the Krell Empire and never lost a major battle. "What is the situation?" he demanded as soon as he arrived in the system. "The humans have fortified around the moon," his tactical officer reported. "They have taken heavy losses, but they refuse to withdraw. War Chief Drakmor's forces are in disarray. Krexnall studied the tactical display with interest. So these are the famous Deathworlders. I have read the reports. Class 12 world. Heavy gravity, toxic atmosphere, every life form competing for survival. He made a sound that might have been respect. But reading reports and seeing them fight are different things. How did they penetrate our shields? Kinetic weapons, Warlord. Solid projectiles moving at extreme velocities. Our shields are not designed to stop physical matter at those speeds. Clever, Krexnall admitted. They found a weakness and exploited it. That shows intelligence. But intelligence alone will not save them. We still have superior numbers and firepower. He turned to his communications officer. Order all ships to advance. Standard battle formation. Concentrate fire on their capital ships. Once we eliminate their heavy vessels, the rest will fall. The Krell reinforcement fleet moved forward like a wall of metal and fire. Their shields glowed with power. Their weapons charged. They expected another desperate charge from the humans, which they would crush with overwhelming force. But the humans had other plans. Admiral Cole watched the enemy approach. Distance to optimal range? 300,000 kilometers in closing, sir, his tactical officer replied. Good. Execute Plan Fortress. All ships begin deployment. The human fleet suddenly broke formation. Half the ships moved to positions around Corvin 4, creating a defensive sphere. The other half did something that confused the Krell completely. They landed on the moon itself. What are they doing? Krexnall asked. Why would they ground their ships? His analyst studied the scans. Warlord, they are not just landing. They are digging in, using the moon's terrain as cover, and they are deploying something from their cargo holds. What kind of something? Mass drivers, Warlord. Electromagnetic catapults. They are turning the moon into a weapons platform. Krexnall's eyes widened. In the time it took his fleet to approach, the humans had built artillery positions on the moon's surface. They were using the moon's own minerals and rock as ammunition, launching them at incredible speeds using magnetic acceleration. The first salvo caught his fleet by surprise. Massive chunks of rock, each weighing tons, shot up from the moon's surface at speeds that made them deadly weapons. They slammed into the Krell ships with devastating force. 3 destroyers were crippled in the first minute. Return fire, Krexnall ordered. Target those ground positions. The Krell fleet fired their plasma cannons at the moon, but hitting a target on a planetary surface from orbit was difficult. The humans had positioned their mass drivers in craters and behind rock formations. Most of the Krell fire hit empty ground. Meanwhile, the human ships in orbit began their own attack. They did not engage in a direct battle. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics, striking fast and then retreating behind the moon where the Krell could not get a clear shot. Captain Lisa Hayes piloted the Tempest around a massive crater, her ship skimming just meters above the moon's surface. Krell ships above tried to track her, but their targeting systems were designed for space combat, not for tracking targets this close to terrain. Fire missiles on my mark, Lisa ordered. 3, 2, 1, mark. The Tempest launched a full spread of kinetic missiles straight up. At the same time, she pulled the ship into a hard turn that would have killed a weaker species from the G-forces. The missiles hit a Krell cruiser from below, punching through the weaker bottom armor. The cruiser's engines exploded. That is 4 today, Lisa's tactical officer said with satisfaction. Do not get cocky, Lisa replied. We have got about 200 more to go. In space above the moon, Lieutenant Amy Chen was having the fight of her life. She and her squadron were engaging Krell fighters, and this time the enemy pilots were better. These were veterans from the reinforcement fleet, not the garrison defenders. Break left, Amy shouted as plasma bolts streaked past her canopy. She threw her fighter into a spin that would have torn apart a less sturdy craft. Her vision tunneled from the G-forces, but her training kicked in. She tensed her muscles, forcing blood to stay in her brain, and kept control. Her wingman was not as lucky. Lieutenant Kevin Barnes took a direct hit to his engine. I am losing power, he called. Going down on the moon. Kevin, eject, Amy shouted. Negative. I can land her. Kevin fought with his controls as his fighter spiraled downward. He managed to guide it into a rough landing in a flat area, near where Commander Jake Murphy's Marines were fighting. The fighter skidded across the rocky ground and came to a stop against a boulder. Kevin climbed out of the wreckage, his body aching from the crash. He pulled his sidearm and looked around. In the distance, he could see explosions and gunfire. The ground battle was still raging. Well, he muttered to himself, looks like I am a Marine now. Commander Jake Murphy was fighting a running battle through a Krell supply depot when he got word that a fighter pilot had crashed nearby. He detached 2 of his Marines to find the pilot while he continued the assault. The Krell garrison was falling back, but they were making the humans pay for every meter of ground. These were professional soldiers and they fought with discipline despite their losses. But they were not prepared for the sheer aggression of the human attack. Staff Sergeant Nicole Wright kicked down a door and tossed a flashbang grenade into the room beyond. The device exploded with blinding light and deafening noise. Before the Krell inside could recover, her squad rushed in and neutralized them with precise fire. "Room clear," Nicole called. "Moving to the next section." They entered what looked like a barracks area. Krell soldiers were scrambling to get their armor on. Nicole did not give them the chance. Her squad opened fire and the fight was over in seconds. "Sergeant, are we actually winning this?" one of her Marines asked. He was young, maybe 20, and this was his first real combat. "Winning?" Nicole checked her ammunition. "Son, we are not trying to win. We are trying to survive. If we can hold this base until the Admiral secures orbit, then yeah, we win. Until then, we just keep fighting." On the Destroyer of Hope, Warlord Krexnall was reassessing his strategy. The humans had turned what should have been a simple battle into a nightmare. Every advantage the Krell possessed, the humans had found a way to counter or avoid. Their inferior technology was actually working in their favor because it was so unexpected. "Bring in the shock legions," Krexnall ordered. "If these humans want to fight on the ground, we will give them a ground battle they cannot win." The shock legions were the elite of the Krell military. They were cyborg warriors, their bodies enhanced with mechanical implants that made them faster, stronger, and nearly impossible to kill. Each one cost more to create than a small ship, but they were worth it. The shock legions had never failed to take an objective. 3 assault carriers detached from the Krell fleet and headed for the moon. They carried 200 shock legion warriors. That should be more than enough to crush the human ground forces. Admiral Cole saw the carriers descending. "Captain Bennett, are you in position?" From the Special Operations Cruiser EFS Reaper, Captain Chris Bennett replied, "In position, sir. We have got them." "Then show them why you do not send ground troops against humans without air superiority." The Reaper had been hiding on the far side of the moon, running silent with all systems on minimal power. Now it came around at full speed and launched every missile it had. The 3 Krell assault carriers focused on their landing approach, detected the attack too late. 2 carriers exploded in mid-flight. The 3rd managed to land, but it was badly damaged. Only half of the Shock Legion warriors inside survived the crash. Those survivors emerged from the wreckage ready to fight. They were massive, each one standing over 3 meters tall with armor that could withstand small arms fire and weapons built into their arms. They looked unstoppable. Then they tried to move quickly in standard gravity and discovered that their enhancements were calibrated for low-gravity combat. On Corvin 4, which had gravity similar to Earth's, they were slow and clumsy. Lieutenant Dan Foster led the human counterattack. His Special Forces team had been waiting for the Shock Legions, and they had prepared the battlefield. The area around the crashed carrier was now filled with obstacles, traps, and defensive positions. "Remember," Dan said to his squad, "they are tough, but they are also predictable. They have been winning so long they have forgotten how to adapt. Use that." The Shock Legions advanced in formation, firing their built-in plasma weapons. Dan's team scattered using the terrain for cover. Then they started using the traps. One Shock Legion warrior stepped on a mine that had been hidden under loose rock. The explosion did not kill him, but it damaged his leg servos. He fell, and while he was down, 2 human soldiers hit him with anti-armor rockets. His shields held, but the force of the impact pushed him into a pit that Dan's team had dug and covered. The battle had been raging for 6 hours. The space around Corvin 4 was filled with debris from destroyed ships, both human and Krell. The moon's surface was scarred with craters from orbital bombardment and littered with the wreckage of crashed fighters and landing craft. Warlord Krexnall looked at the casualty reports with growing frustration. His fleet had started with overwhelming numerical superiority. Now that advantage was gone. The humans had destroyed 30 of his ships while losing only 15 of their own. His ground forces were pinned down. His elite Shock Legions were defeated. "How is this possible?" he asked his staff. "We have better technology, more ships, superior weapons. How are these primitives winning?" His chief tactical officer, An old Krell who had served for 40 years spoke up carefully. "Warlord, if I may, I have been studying their tactics. The humans do not fight the way we do. We use our technology as our primary advantage. We rely on our shields, our weapons, our systems. The humans use their technology as tools, but they rely on something else." "What else is there?" Krexnal demanded. "Themselves, Warlord. They rely on their own abilities. Their speed, their adaptability, their willingness to take risks, and most importantly, they do not fear death the way we do." Krexnal was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You are telling me we are losing because they are more willing to die?" "No, Warlord. We are losing because they are more willing to do whatever it takes to win. Death is just one option among many." Krexnal made a decision. "Then we will show them that we can be just as ruthless. Target the moon itself. Full bombardment. We will destroy the entire surface if we have to. Warlord, our own forces are still down there. Then they will die for the Empire." Krexnal said coldly. "Fire." On the Valiant, alarms began blaring. "Admiral, the Krell fleet is charging all weapons." The tactical officer shouted. "They are going to hit the moon with everything they have." Admiral Cole's face went hard. "How long until we can evacuate our ground forces?" "At least 30 minutes, sir. The Krell will fire in 5. Cole looked at the holographic display, calculating options. There were none. If the Krell bombarded the moon, thousands of human Marines and special forces would die. His fleet could not stop that many ships from firing, unless he made them stop by threatening something they cared about more than victory. "All ships," Cole ordered, his voice calm and steady. "New target. The Destroyer of Hope. Concentrate all fire on the Krell flagship. Everything we have." "Sir, that will leave us exposed to their entire fleet," his executive officer protested. "I know," Cole replied. "Do it anyway." The human fleet turned as one and charged directly at the Krell flagship. Every railgun, every missile, every weapon they had left was aimed at one target. The Destroyer of Hope's shields flared bright as hundreds of projectiles slammed into it. Krexnal felt his ship shake from the impacts. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "They are targeting us specifically, Warlord. They have stopped defending themselves entirely. They are sacrificing their fleet to destroy this ship." Krexnal understood immediately. The humans were sending a message. "If you kill our people on the ground, we will kill you personally." It was not about winning the battle anymore. It was about revenge. "Cease bombardment," Krexnal ordered. "All ships defend the flagship." "Stop those human ships!" The Krell fleet broke formation, abandoning their attack on the moon to protect their commander. The human ships kept coming, taking terrible damage but never slowing down. 3 human destroyers exploded. A cruiser broke apart. But the survivors kept firing. On the bridge of the Tempest, Captain Lisa Hayes watched her shield display drop to 0. "All power to engines and weapons," she ordered. "We are not stopping." A plasma bolt hit the Tempest's port side, tearing through the hull. The ship's artificial gravity failed. The lights flickered. But the weapon still worked and Lisa kept firing. "Captain, we have to pull back," her executive officer shouted. "Not until the Admiral gives the order," Lisa snapped back. Admiral Cole saw that the Krell had taken his bait. They had stopped the bombardment to defend their flagship. Now the human ground forces had time to regroup and prepare for extraction. "All ships, defensive retreat," Cole ordered. "Fall back to Rally Point Alpha. We have done what we came to do." The human fleet, what was left of it, pulled back. They had lost 7 capital ships and dozens of smaller vessels. But they had saved the Marines on the ground, and they had shown the Krell that humans would not be intimidated. On Corvin 4, Commander Jake Murphy received the order to fall back to the extraction points. His Marines had taken the main Krell base and were holding it, but they were exhausted. They had been fighting for 6 hours without rest. "All units begin withdrawal," Jake ordered, covering fire by squads. "Nobody gets left behind." Staff Sergeant Nicole Wright and her squad were the last to leave. They set demolition charges throughout the base, destroying everything the Krell could use. As they ran for the landing zone, Nicole saw one of her Marines stumble and fall. "Martinez is down," someone shouted. Nicole ran back, ignoring the plasma fire zipping past her. She grabbed Martinez and hauled him to his feet. The young Marine had taken a hit to his leg. "I can't run, Sergeant," Martinez gasped. "Then I will carry you," Nicole said. She threw him over her shoulder and ran toward the extraction point. Her legs burned from the effort. Her lungs felt like fire. But she did not stop. Marines did not leave their own behind. They reached the landing craft just as the demolition charges went off. The Krell base erupted in a series of explosions that sent debris flying into the thin atmosphere. Nicole practically threw Martinez into the craft and climbed in after him. "Go, go, go," she shouted to the pilot. The craft lifted off, dodging anti-aircraft fire as it climbed toward orbit. Nicole looked down at the moon's surface, at the scars of battle covering the gray rock. So much destruction, so much death. And for what? Then she remembered why they were here. They were proving to the galaxy that humanity deserved a place among the stars, that Earth could be an ally worth having. Sometimes proof required blood. Lieutenant Dan Foster was on a different extraction craft with the survivors of his Special Forces team. They had captured 3 of the Shock Legion warriors who had survived the battle. The prisoners sat in the cargo area, their weapons disabled, their armor battered. One of the Krell warriors looked at Dan and spoke through a translator. "You fought well, human. I have never been defeated before today." "Then you learned an important lesson," Dan replied. "There is always someone tougher. Today it was us. Tomorrow it might be someone else." "Your people are insane," the warrior said. "You fight like you have nothing to lose." Dan smiled grimly. "No, we fight like we have everything to lose. That is the difference." Back in orbit, Admiral Cole surveyed the damage to his fleet. The Valiant had taken multiple hits but was still operational. Several other ships were not so lucky. He had started with 20 capital ships. Now he had 13. The fleet's combat effectiveness was down to 60%, but the mission was accomplished. They held the Corvin system. The Krell were retreating. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Krell flagship," the communications officer reported. "Put it through," Cole said. Warlord Krexnel's scarred face appeared on the screen. He looked tired and surprisingly respectful. "Admiral Cole, I am calling to inform you that Krell forces are withdrawing from the Corvin system. You have won this engagement." "Just this engagement?" Cole asked. "For now," Krexnel admitted. "I underestimated your species. That was a mistake I will not make again. You fight like nothing I have ever encountered. You are unpredictable, aggressive, and you do not know when to quit. Those are dangerous qualities." "Coming from you, I will take that as a compliment," Cole replied. "It is meant as one," the Krell said. "I have one question if you will answer it. You knew you could not win a direct battle against my full fleet. Why did you stand and fight instead of retreating?" Cole thought about that for a moment. "Because retreating was not an option. We were given a mission. We complete our missions no matter the cost. That is what humans do." "Then the galaxy should be very careful about what missions it gives you," Krexnel said. "We will meet again, Admiral. Next time I will be prepared." The transmission ended. Cole turned to his crew. "Status of all ships?" "The fleet is battered but intact, sir. We can make it back to friendly space." "Good. Signal Captain Hayes. Tell her she did well today. Tell all the captains they did well. And someone find out the status of our ground forces. I want a full casualty report." The numbers came in over the next hour. The human fleet had lost 40% of its ships and over 3,000 crew members. The ground forces had lost 800 Marines and Special Forces operators. The casualty rate was horrific by galactic standards, but they had completed their mission. They had proven that humans could fight and win against a superior enemy. They had shown the galaxy what Deathworlders were capable of. On the Severian observation ship, Ambassador Velthor was composing his report to the Galactic Council. His hands were shaking slightly as he wrote, "The human military forces have successfully defended the Corvin system against overwhelming odds. Their tactics are unconventional, their technology inferior, but their determination and adaptability are." 5 days after the Battle of Corvin 4, the Galactic Council convened in their grand chamber on Zenith Prime. Every seat was filled. Representatives from 12 species sat in their designated places, and the air was thick with tension and anticipation. Ambassador Velthor stood at his position, looking more confident than he had in weeks. Next to him, on a display screen, was the full battle footage from the Corvin system. Every council member had seen it at least twice. Some had watched it a dozen times, trying to understand how the humans had done what they did. General Thexlon entered the chamber and took his seat. The massive creature looked different somehow. Less arrogant, more thoughtful. He had spent the past 5 days reviewing every second of the battle, analyzing human tactics and reading reports from the front lines. This council is now in session, the speaker announced. She was a small, ancient creature, from a species that had been in space for 10,000 years. We are here to discuss the human application and their performance at Corvin 4. General Thexelon, please present your report. The general stood. Honored council members, I will be brief. The humans completed their mission. They took and held the Corvin system against overwhelming odds. They defeated a force 3 times their size, including the Krell's elite shock legions. Their casualties were heavy by our standards, but acceptable by theirs. My recommendation is immediate approval of their application. There was stunned silence. Many had expected the general to recommend rejection, to claim that the humans were too aggressive or too dangerous. You approve? The blue-feathered ambassador asked in disbelief. After watching them fight like savages, after seeing how many of their own people they were willing to sacrifice? I approve precisely because of how they fight, General Thexelon replied. They did not sacrifice their people carelessly. They sacrificed them when necessary to complete the mission. There is a difference. Every human death at Corvin 4 served a tactical purpose. They do not waste lives. They spend them when the cost is justified by the goal. Velthor spoke up. The general is correct. I watched the entire battle. The humans took risks that we would never take, but they were calculated risks. They knew their own capabilities and the enemy's weaknesses. They exploited those weaknesses brilliantly. But their technology is inferior, another ambassador protested. How can they be effective allies if their ships and weapons are generations behind ours? Their technology is simpler, General Thexelon corrected. That is not the same as inferior. Simple technology is harder to disrupt, easier to repair, and more reliable under stress. When a human railgun fires, it works. When our plasma cannons overheat or our shields fail under unexpected attack, the humans are still fighting. The debate went on for hours. Some council members were enthusiastic about accepting humanity. Others were cautious. A few were openly fearful. But as the day wore on, a consensus began to form. Finally, the speaker called for a vote. All in favor of accepting humanity's application to join the Mutual Defense Network? Every hand, claw, tentacle, and appendage went up. The vote was unanimous. Then it is decided, the speaker announced. Send a message to Earth. Humanity is formally invited to join the Galactic Council as full members. Furthermore, we request that Admiral Cole and his command staff remain in our space to help reorganize the defense network. On the EFS Valiant, which was docked at a council repair station, Admiral Cole received the news. He was in his quarters, reviewing casualty reports and writing letters to the families of the fallen. When the message came through, Admiral, you need to see this, his executive officer said, appearing on his communication screen. Cole looked up, tired lines showing on his face. What is it? Sir, the council just voted. We are in. Full membership, full rights, and they want you to stay and help them rebuild their military. For a moment, Cole did not react. Then he allowed himself a small smile. Well, I suppose we proved our point. More than that, sir. We changed the galaxy. Cole stood and stretched, feeling every one of his 60 years. Get the word to all ships, and send a message home. Tell them we did it. Tell them Earth has a seat at the table now. 2 decks below, Captain Lisa Hayes was in the ship's medical bay visiting the wounded. The Tempest had been so badly damaged that it was going to be in repairs for months. So Lisa and her crew were temporarily assigned to the Valiant. She stopped at the bed of a young ensign who had lost his left arm in the battle. How are you holding up, Carlson? She asked. The ensign smiled weakly. Better than some, ma'am. Doc says I will get a prosthetic that works as good as the real thing. I will be back on duty in a few months. Take your time, Lisa said. You earned a rest. We all did. She moved through the medical bay, talking to each wounded crew member, making sure they knew they were not forgotten. This was the part of command that the training never fully prepared you for. The weight of responsibility for every life lost, every injury suffered. But she would bear that weight. That was what leaders did. On Corvin 4, Commander Jake Murphy stood on the surface of the moon, looking at the memorial that his Marines had built. It was simple, just a stone marker with the names of all the humans who had died in the battle carved into it. 800 names, 800 lives that would never go home. They will not be forgotten, sir, Staff Sergeant Nicole Wright said, standing next to him. No, Jake agreed. They will not. Every time a human ship passes through this system, they will see this moon. They will remember what happened here. What we achieved. Do you think it was worth it? Nicole asked quietly. Jake was silent for a long moment. That is a question every soldier has to answer for themselves. All I know is that we were given a mission that everyone thought was impossible. We completed it. We proved that humanity belongs out here among the stars. If those 800 gave their lives for that, then yes, I think it was worth it. But I will spend the rest of my life making sure their sacrifice meant something. They stood in silence for a while. Then Jake said, "Come on, Sergeant. We have a ceremony to attend." Back on Zenith Prime, preparations were being made for the formal acceptance ceremony. Representatives from Earth had arrived, including military officers and diplomats. Commander Jake Murphy and Captain Lisa Hayes were there as well, wearing their dress uniforms and representing the thousands of humans who had fought at Corvin 4. The ceremony was held in the main council chamber, with delegates from all 12 species present. Admiral Cole stood at the front, along with the 2 human ambassadors who would officially represent Earth on the council. General Thexelon made a speech about cooperation and mutual defense. Ambassador Velthor spoke about the courage and determination that humans had shown. Other speakers followed, each adding their words of welcome. Then Admiral Cole was invited to speak. He walked to the podium and looked out at the assembled delegates. Some of them still looked uncertain. Others seemed genuinely pleased. All of them were watching him carefully, wondering what the Deathworlder would say. "Thank you for this opportunity to speak," Cole began. "I am not a diplomat. I am a soldier. So I will speak plainly. My people come from a harsh world. Earth has tested us every day of our existence. It made us tough. It made us adaptable. It made us survivors. But it also taught us the value of cooperation. On Earth, no one survives alone. We learn to work together, to trust each other, to fight for each other. That is what we bring to this council. Not just our military strength, but our willingness to stand with our allies no matter the cost." He paused, looking at each delegate in turn. "You have seen what we can do in battle, but I hope you will also see what we can do in peace. We do not want to conquer anyone. We do not want to dominate anyone. We just want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to help protect those who cannot protect themselves. We want to make the galaxy safer for everyone." There was silence when he finished. Then General Thexelon stood and began to applaud, a gesture he had learned from studying human customs. One by one, the other delegates stood as well, showing their respect in their own ways. After the ceremony, there was a reception where the humans mingled with delegates from other species. Lieutenant Amy Chen found herself talking to a Severian pilot who had watched the battle from the observation ship. "Your flying was incredible," the Severian said through his translator. "I have never seen maneuvers like that. How do you handle the G-forces?" Amy shrugged. "Training mostly. And our bodies are built for high gravity. What would kill you just makes us uncomfortable." "That must be useful," the Severian said. "It is," Amy admitted, "but it comes with a cost. We have to work harder just to exist. Every day on Earth is a challenge. But that is okay. Challenges make us stronger." Across the room, Staff Sergeant Nicole Wright was talking to a group of military officers from different species. They were asking her about human ground tactics. "The key is adaptability," Nicole explained. "We do not have the best weapons or the best armor, so we use our brains. We look at the environment, the enemy, the situation, and we figure out how to win with what we have. Sometimes that means being aggressive. Sometimes it means being sneaky. Sometimes it means doing something completely unexpected. But how do you train for that?" one officer asked. "How do you teach adaptability?"